Hello and welcome back to Catch and Cook California. I'm Kevin. Today I'm joined by my good buddy Lee. This is video number 8 in my new series, An Introduction to Freediving and Spearfishing California. Today we've got conditions out here on the central coast that look like Hawaii. We're going spearfishing. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Boom! So, when we're trying to gauge visibility, if you look down in there, you can actually see all the definition. We've got kelp in here, up in there we've got some sand, and there's all kinds of rocks. If you follow the rocks down, you can actually see where they hit the bottom. This is like gin clear water. This is the kind of day that you pray for. If you're seeing more greenish color, then that's less viz. Brown usually indicates it's like 1 foot. But this day, that's probably like 20 feet of viz right there. Alright, so Lee and I are suiting up. One thing I want to remind you is open cell suits require some kind of a lubrication. You can see how dry it is here, and then here it's wet. You want to make sure all facets, the entire inside, is coated with some kind of a lubrication. And the way we do it was we just put a little bit of hair conditioner and water. I use biodegradable dish soap and water sometimes. It really kind of depends. Whatever I've got on hand. Biodegradable is always a good way to go because we're going to introduce like a little bit to the ocean. So get it in there, rub it around. I like to get a little on my hands and put it on my hair as well. And then when you're putting your suit on, you want to obviously start with your arms and then make sure your hood is facing that direction. Otherwise you're going to put it on backwards and suffocate. Get your arms in. I'll kind of run them back and forth a few times. Once I've got it like so, I take a deep breath and I'll put my head in. Now I'm using my fingertips while I'm holding the suit. I do not want to dig in with my fingernails because the inside of the suit is open cell, which makes it very, very sensitive, unlike the outside, which is nylon coated and really strong. So we don't want to dig in with our fingertips because you can tear the inside of your suit even on the first day when it's brand new. So all fingertips, no fingernails. Pull that beaver tail down. Anyway, once I get it on, just gloves, booties, mask and snorkel, fins, weight belt, jump in the water. On this particular day, we were headed down to do a little bit of diving because I was actually scouting to take people out for guided freedive spearfishing the very next day. So Lee agreed to join me, and we were pleasantly surprised by being greeted by incredibly clear waters. There's nothing like it. It makes you feel so happy the moment you put your face in that water and you can see everything in perfect definition. So pretty much immediately kicking off the shore in like 4 feet of water, I started seeing perch. Eventually I picked a spot, dropped the float line down to mark the spot, and you can see Lee swimming up to me here. I can see him from at least 15 or 20 feet away from underwater. Excellent visibility. All right, you ready to go out?
Let's do this.
Hell yeah.
One of my favorite things to see is the light from the sun flickering through on the blades of giant kelp. In this particular day, we're on the central coast. So as we drop down into this beautiful, healthy kelp forest, I'm seeing more and more of these perch and some absolutely beautiful sea anemones and sea stars. A really healthy reef. So this area is the central coast. In contrast to the sea urchin barrens, which I've talked about in previous videos, this is what a reef should look like, a healthy kelp forest. So here Lee's on the bottom. He found himself a crack, and in that crack a nice little scallop, so he's going to do a few drops on that to see if he can bring home a scallop. You'll notice that when Lee is on the surface, he's not kicking frantically, he's not moving about. You know, he's signaling with his hands to communicate with me, but pretty much he's just laying there, relaxing. And that's exactly what you want to do as a freediver. When you hit the surface, take a deep breath with your snorkel out. Then clear your snorkel, put your face back in the water, and lay there and breathe through your snorkel without moving at all. Just let the swell move you around a little bit gently and catch your breath. Now, I stayed down on the bottom on this particular dive, and I swam over to this little pocket, and you can see there's a whole school of perch there. At this point, I was thinking, yeah, this is a fantastic spot to guide and bring some folks out for their very first time for freedive spearfishing. So here's Lee breathing up again. You can see again, he's laying on the surface pretty much motionless. The water is going to move him a little bit. His fins are only moving with the water. And then when he's ready, he does a duck dive. His fins come out of the water. They don't splash around on the surface. And he begins to kick once the blades of his fins actually get subsurface. That way it's fully efficient. Every kick that he's making is deliberate. When he gets to the bottom, he's not kicking around frantically. He's kind of just wedged himself in the rock there so that he can work with his hands. And believe it or not, you don't stay down that long when you're working on a scallop because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to try to pry these things loose. So he's headed back up to the surface, and we're going to look in this crack and see this cool juvenile rockfish and a beautiful little scallop there, just waiting to be pried out. So here I am making a drop and cruising through the kelp forest. This is what SpongeBob SquarePants looks like in real life. Yeah, believe it or not, sea sponges are not square. A really cool anemone here, cruising again through this low-growing kelp forest, and eventually making my way back to the surface to catch a breath. So you'll also notice that when I'm diving, when I'm cruising around, I don't have the snorkel in. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to continue to talk about this. And the main reason that I'm doing this is if you keep your snorkel in your mouth when you dive down, it creates bubbles, and those bubbles actually make a lot of noise, and that noise can spook fish. When I hit the surface, the snorkel is out, and that means I don't have to push any air out of the snorkel before I get my breaths. And like a total noob, my GoPro was off, so I didn't actually get the footage of cutting up the scallop that Lee got, but he did get it.
Boom. Ooh, nice.
So Lee kept making drops. He found another scallop he was looking for, and after a while we switched gears as I started to see a few rockfish. So when I hit the surface, I brought my board over and unclipped my 3-prong pole spear. Now this is probably the last of the Central and Northern California series that I will be doing, specifically focusing on these inexpensive 3-prong pole spears. I will use these for a few other select species that I want to highlight in Southern California, but yeah, we're going to be switching to the spear gun in this series from now on. But here is a blue rockfish. This is a schooling fish, and another one that is great to pursue with the 3-prong pole spear. Remember those pole spears, I think they range between like $33 and $65. I think on average they're probably about $50 now. But very inexpensive, totally effective, and you know, you'll have to replace the band after a while, but in all honesty, that 3-prong is exactly the 3-prong that I grew up with, and they'll last you 20 years or more if you take care of them. And they work quite well, as you can see. So I braid my fish, that way they're not suffering, and I put my arm through the bungee, that way I'm not going to lose my pole spear while I go over to the board to unlatch my bag and put that fish on the board, remembering to latch the bag, and that way that fish is not lost. On the surface again, I'll start by pre-clearing my ears, take a deep breath, remove the snorkel as I was saying before, and then I keep my thumb and forefinger pinching my nose, and I clear my ears probably every 2 feet on the way down. And that way by the time I get to the bottom, my eustachian tubes are still clear, and I feel just like I do on the surface. So on this drop, I found another blue rockfish. In this particular case, I found one on the periphery of a school and was able to get the drop and get the shot. Now keep in mind, I am following these fish in this footage, but I'm not chasing these fish. I'm actually kind of very casually dive bombing from the surface at an angle where they can't see me, and I'm just gliding down with them so I don't seem to be a threat. If you swim after them, if you lock eyes with them and you act like a predator, they will catch on to that real quickly, and they'll perceive it just like they would a seal, their main predator, and they will turn and they will hightail it on out of there. So by just casually breathing up, casually descending, and just slowly arcing your back or twisting your body so that you just kind of glide into their path and then getting that shot, It's all subtle movements, and you'll be much more likely to get the drop on that fish. So I got this fish on the board and decided to put my pole spear back on the board and just go putt around and see what other kind of cool sea life I could see. Remember, anything you don't lock down on that board is an offering to the ocean, and as soon as you swim away from the board, you'll never see it again. So some purple urchins down here. Lee let me use his light. I was shining back in this cave. There were a couple of scallops back there, some really cool filter feeders, and all kinds of cool life growing all over that reef.
Are you seeing much?
Not a lot, but I got a nice one.
You got a good scallop? Hell yeah, dude. Nice.
That was a little grass rockfish there. And yeah, as I'm cruising down, this is a really cool sea creature. This is a Megathura crenulata, giant keyhole limpet. It is delicious. I've showcased it in a previous video, but I want to give it a lot more airtime in a future video. They're really tasty, and we find those showing up in the archaeological record going back thousands of years. So old school California cuisine. But moving right along, that's not the focus of this video. So I dropped back down with the pole spear when I started finding some terrain that looked a little fishier, a little more like the kind of spot that I might find something else I've been looking for, another species that I've wanted to showcase. So here I'm looking at ledges. I'm cruising very slowly. I'm not trying to spook the fish. I'm just cruising along. I want to see the fish before they see me.
Did you see that little kelp greenling? Okay, I think he probably went this way.
So as I was saying, I had seen a kelp greenling. This is a fish that I don't typically find in great abundance on the central coast, but I find them in incredible abundance on the north coast. And it's one of those that they do hole up, but they do a lot of free swimming as well. Sometimes you'll find them on ledges, sometimes in caves, but a lot of times they're just cruising around the reef. And I find them to be a better texture and a better flavor than a perch, but not quite as firm of a texture as a rockfish. And because they're free swimming a lot of times, I find them just slightly more challenging than some of the perch, which are also free swimming but tend to be a lot slower and let you get a little closer. So this is a fish that I wanted to highlight.
There's a couple of pretty solid cracks right here.
Yeah.
Have you looked at them?
One of them.
What's that?
There's a scallop in one of them.
Yeah, all right.
Greenling's right here underneath us.
It is? Did he stay put or did he split?
I came up, he was sitting right there, and I came all the way up, and he was still right there, so
Is he?
he's right over here on a little ledge.
He looked legal, right?
I can't tell anymore.
Okay. Let me drop down and look at him.
So I asked Lee, he looked legal, right? Because when I saw this greenling, I thought, oh yeah, that's at least 12 inches, which is their minimum size. Now people have asked me, how do you gauge the size of a fish that has a size limit when you're underwater? Everything is under magnification. A lot of this comes with experience, and one thing that I do is I'll mark my board with different increments of known fish minimum sizes. So I'll have a mark for 12, I'll have a mark for 15 for cabezon, I'll have a mark for 18 for striped bass, for 22 for halibut, and for lingcod. And I constantly reference that board. I keep looking at it. I also put that on my spear gun, and a lot of times I also draw it on my pole spear. I don't have it on this particular pole spear, but at this point, when I see this greenling, I know he's legal. So I get my shot. It's not exactly perfect shot placement. It's right behind the gill plate, which is where I like to hit these fish, but about an inch lower would be perfect shot placement. But still, the 3-prong, aka the paralyzer tip, did its business, and this fish is not even moving.
Thanks, man.
Just check out the beautiful patterns, these blues, and yeah, so like I said, I like to dispatch my fish, so knife through the brain very quickly. When the mouth opens and you see that blood coming out, that fish is dead, it is not suffering. And kelp greenling have sexual dimorphism, so the females tend to be more of an orangish color, and these males tend to have more of these blue patterns. So this is a male kelp greenling. So I remove it from my spear and bring it on up to the board and throw it in the bag. This is probably about 13, 14 inches. I think this one was about 14 inches, but like I said, minimum size is 12 inches. At this point, I secure my pole spear again. Lee was finishing up with his scallop dive, and so we decided to head in. There we have it. Kelp greenling, 2 blue rockfish, all with the 3-prong pole spear. Lee's scallop here. Look at that.
Nice, man. That's a beaut.
Look at that.
Did you have fun?
It was a great day out here. Beautiful, beautiful water, super clear. Yeah.
Dude, that was
Great to get
like tropical.
Yeah, it was like Hawaii.
Except
amazing.
our lips are numb. It's real cold. We'll take this off. As I mentioned, we want to be really careful of the inside, not getting our fingernails in there. It's even more important when you're taking the suit off than it is when you're putting it on. Pull it up over the top, grab it up to here. I'm using the backs of my hands underneath inside my suit. That way I don't actually have to dig my thumbs or fingers in there. Again, I'll get this in there, but I'm not digging the thumbnail in. That way I don't tear the suit. You spend any time freediving, your suit is going to start to stink. And I just found this stuff called Sink the Stink. Apparently it is an ultra concentrated wetsuit cleaner. So it only takes a few ounces. It's got measurements back here for like 10 gallons of water. And my suit smells amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and recommend this stuff. So Lee and I were totally zonked after the dive, washing the gear, prepping the fish, all that. So it's the next day, Lee's at work, and I'm gonna make one of my favorite quick but beautiful little dishes, speed ceviche. Got just enough fish that I think I should be able to do 2 ceviche tostadas. You want to pick a nice juicy lime. Make sure you squeeze it. That should not be hard. It should be nice and supple. You can feel the juice in there. Get that juice all over it. For a small batch like this, I do about a half a lime, maybe a whole lime. And we're just going to cover it and let it really soak this up. Traditional ceviche should have a serious citrus flavor, which makes it beautiful for a summertime dish, especially after a dive in Southern California when it's hot. Got a nice Negro Modelo with a little squeeze of lime in there too. That's like the perfect pairing. I'm in the Bay Area, so it's gloomy and foggy and paradise. It's still gonna be delicious. Then I'm gonna squeeze this lime juice out, add some fresh lime juice as I add in all the other ingredients, which is basically like pico de gallo. It's like salsa fresca, like, you know, a chunky salsa, I guess you could call it. And all that gets mixed together. Throw a few spices in there, a little bit of avocado at the end, that's key. And then I'm gonna fry up some tostadas. Lime juice. So I do ceviche my own style. So I'm gonna do a little bit of salt in here. I'm gonna do a little bit of chili powder, Mexican chili powder, and I'm gonna do a little bit of cumin, just a little, not too much. Just gonna give it just a nice little background note of flavor. Already got that jalapeno in there. You could do a serrano or habanero if you like that, however spicy you like it. I like it spicy, but I also brought with me some of my favorite hot sauces, so those are gonna top it. Look at that color. So I cut the avo like so, little cubes. You want to add this at the very end because if you add it too early and you start mixing it up, it'll turn into like a fishy guacamole, which I'm sure is delicious, but does not look very appealing. So once you add that in, just give it a real gentle stir, just breaking up those chunks a little bit. You don't want this to mash up. You just want to keep those chunks whole. And that's what it looks like. Coming together. I love a little tapatio. I'm just going to give a couple dashes. I'll give a couple dashes at the end. But the truth of the matter is, my absolute favorite hot sauce of all time since I was a kid is this one right here. You'll see the bottle is heavily worn. I love this stuff. Extreme. They make another one that's a garlic sauce. It's very similar to this. It's habanero. It's not as extreme as it might be marketed, but it is fantastic. So flavorful. Manufactured by Spicin' Foods in Kansas City. This stuff is the perfect blend of spice. It's hot, but it's not like make you cry hot unless you don't use it responsibly. It comes out if you pour it, so be careful. I'm gonna save this for the end. I did one fillet from the blue rockfish and one fillet from the Greenling, just like part of a fillet of each. So I figured that should be enough for me to give it a nice taste test for you guys. And I'm going to save the rest for Diane so we can do fish tacos tonight. A little bit of extreme. Ooh. That's a lot. Another dash of tapatio. Salt. Beautiful. Citrusy, spicy, got the crunch and a little bit of a zing, and all that's balanced with a nice hot tostada, butteriness from that avocado. Yeah. That is so good, so refreshing. Remember, you can do this with perch. You can do it with rockfish. It's got a lot of spice in there. Heck, I've done it with bass before, like freshwater bass. It's still very, very good. So, yeah, if you live away from the ocean, you can do it with bass. It's a good dish. I made enough for two. I accidentally made enough for three, which I'm pretty stoked on right now. I'm gonna eat this and that one. I hope you learned some things in this video. I hope you enjoyed the experience. If you like this series, if you like these videos, please share these videos, like, subscribe, and please leave a comment. I love hearing back from you. Until next time, keep the old ways alive.
For those who are interested, I will be guiding intertidal foraging at the extreme low tides that will be starting this Saturday, June 3rd, and they will be going all the way through next Friday. And when the conditions are good, I also guide freedive spearfishing.